Hi, quilting friends. Aubrey here. Welcome to my sewing room on this fabulous Friday. I hope everyone's excited to be joining us. I hope you had a great week and are looking forward to your weekend. Today on Featured Friday, we are going to be talking about layout boxes. I know Lindsay mentioned this in her video last week. Layout boxes is something that we all use very often when we are working with our Butler systems. We don't always do edge-to-edge designs that fill our entire quilt area. Sometimes we want to do custom work and do individual spaces on our quilt top, going along with the quilt pattern that we've got in front of us. Sometimes we're filling in rectangles or squares or hexagons or triangles or orange peels or even circles. So using your layout screen and adding layout boxes or layout spaces will allow you to individually fill in those areas with whatever patterns you choose. So I'm going to switch you guys around so you can see my quilt and the Butler screen. All right, guys, so I have got my Butler screen up here. I have already marked my quilt area or my safe area to work within. And down here you can see my pink and purple quilt with lots and lots of squares and rectangles on it. I will be individually quilting inside every single one of these rectangles and squares. So that is why I am working so hard with my layout. As you can see here on the left side of our screen, the layout button is already highlighted. So we are ready to start working with adding layout areas. And I am going to go over here to the right side of our screen in our fuchsia bar. And to start adding your first layout area, we are going to hit the plus sign. Now across the bottom of the screen, we see a bar that pops up and it says set the first point in the pattern box. And we've got a red X and a green plus sign that has appeared on our screen as well. So to set the first point, and I am going to be using the top left corner here of this particular box, I am going to hit my green plus sign. After I do that, the text changes and says, set the next point in the pattern box. Now I am going to come down to the bottom right corner of my particular block, and I am going to, in this instance, hit the green check mark. Now this is a 2-point version of creating a layout area, and it has perfectly created my rectangle, generating it itself off of the 2 points going from the top left to the bottom right. This has created a perfectly squared off rectangle with perfect straight lines to it. Now, we all know that our quilts aren't always perfect. So sometimes this 2-point method of creating a square or rectangle doesn't always work. Sometimes our piecing gets off, sometimes our seam allowance gets off, sometimes things are just a little wibbly wobbly on our quilt. So I'm going to do this next rectangle using 4 points for you. To create our next pattern layout area or our next layout square rectangle, I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit the plus sign again. It's telling me on the screen to hit my first pattern box. I am going to hit my top left corner with my needle line up, and I am going to hit my plus sign. I am going to come on down to the bottom left corner, and I am going to hit the plus sign again. So I am going to start adding points, and I'm going to do all 4 corners. I am now going in a counterclockwise motion, and I am going to hit the bottom right corner and add my plus sign. And now I am going to move upward on this block on my quilt to the top right corner. And now I am going to hit the check mark since I've hit all 4 corners of this rectangle. And as you can see, it has created that rectangle using 4 points for me. And if you look very closely, you can see that not all of the lines are perfectly straight. Where the corners meet, they are not perfectly lined up on the grid. And this is where this comes in handy when our piecing gets a little bit off or our fabric stretches a little bit, when we've had to add a little bit extra seam allowance or take away a little bit of seam allowance to make things fit in our quilt. That way, when you go to add your pattern into this space here for quilting, you know it's going to fit perfectly in here and it's not going to bleed over any edges because you used your 2-point method like you did here. You can do triangles as well, and I'm going to take this large area here and actually divide it into a triangle by drawing a diagonal line from corner to corner. So we're going to create another pattern box here, or layout box here. I'm going to add my plus sign. It says select the first point. So once again, I'm starting with my top left. Get that right there on the corner. Add my plus sign. I'm going to bring it down to my bottom left corner. I'm going to hit my plus sign again. And now I'm going to move diagonally across this large rectangle to that top right corner. And I'm going to hit my check mark. And as you can see here on the screen, I have now created a triangle out of this particular rectangle on my quilt. Your quilt may have half square triangles in it, or 60-degree triangles, or any kind of triangle in it, and you can hit your 3 different points and you can create a triangle space to quilt within. The next thing I want to look at is adding more points. Sometimes it's not just 3 points that you get in a triangle, or 4 points of a rectangle or a square, or even creating one with 2 points. Sometimes we are going to quilt hexagons or octagons or circles or orange peels or many different varieties of shapes that we have in our quilt. You can add more than 1 point, or 2 points, or 3 points, or 4 points. You can add and add and add as many points as you need to get around your shape so that you know your quilt area looks right. So we are going to add here, and we are going to once again start in the top left corner and hit our plus sign, and we're going to go counterclockwise around this rectangle. Adding points, slightly moving our machine, and adding points as we go. I'm moving maybe between like 3/4 of an inch and an inch every time I move the machine. And that way, I'm getting a more accurate line with what is on my quilt top. When I did a circle that I went around, I must have added between 40 and 50 points this way so that I got a very accurate circle for my pattern box area. My layout was exactly what I needed it to be to create a circle. So as you can see, you can add as many points as you need to. You can follow your lines on your quilt top as you need to create your area. I'm going to stop here and just hit my check mark, and it's created a lovely little triangle for me. Now, you can see my triangle, but I can't see what I created in these other boxes right now. But we can look at that by changing our icons down here at the bottom left from our individual square view to our full quilt square view. And if I do that, you can see my full quilt area with each box that I've created. If we go back to our individual, you can see that that last triangle I created is labeled 5 of 5. So I actually have 5 different quilt areas available. If I go with my back arrow, the triangle that I created on this fabric is right here. If I hit the back button once again, Number 3 of 5 is the rectangle I created with the 4 points here. If I hit the back button again, you see the rectangle that I created on this fabric here. And if we hit the back button one more time, you see my safe area that I started out with when I set my butler's quilt area when I first turned it on. So you can go through the different layouts that you created and work with them individually, adding different patterns and working with them one at a time. Let's say I don't want this one anymore. I've changed my mind and I don't want to do that particular triangle. We can actually go over to our fuchsia bar on the right hand side and hit our minus button. And our butler is going to ask us if we want to remove this pattern box, and I am going to say yes. You can now see down here at the bottom of the screen that has been removed, and now I only have 4 out of 4 pattern layout boxes available that I've created. So it has taken that last one away. I hope that's been very helpful to you guys to learn a little bit about your different layout boxes and how the feature works. Once again, you don't need more than 2 points to create a square or rectangle, but you can use as many points as you need to around a quilt area that you've got on your top to create the perfect layout space for what you're planning on quilting. Take your time, make sure you line everything up just the way you want it, and that way you know once you add your pattern in and actually start to quilt, it's going to fit perfectly and look great. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you guys taking the time, watching our videos, and spending Fridays with us. Y'all have a great weekend. Bye.